The following recording is from a live Zoom given on Friday, May 5th, 2023.
All right. Good morning, everyone, parents and guardians of our seniors. I am Mr. Chiakulas, the post-secondary counselor, and welcome to another L.A.H-tte parent Zoom event. This is a student services series in which we cover various topics that are related to your student's life at Hersey or life after Hersey, hence the spelling of latte. And because it's bright and early, we hope you grab some caffeine and are ready to join us, whether it's a latte or an energy drink or anything it may be. I'm really excited to be joined today by Hersey Social Worker, Dr. Jeff Bondora. Thanks, Dr. Jeff.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. He's got a lot of great experience working with students and parents, of course, with mental health in general, but even with this specific topic of transitioning to college and so on. So he's going to be covering most of the really important information today. So in just the 30 minutes we have planned, and as I had mentioned in the confirmation email, we're going to hopefully have integrated the answers to a lot of your questions into the presentation. So, which again, we'll try to wrap up in about 30 minutes. At the end, if we didn't cover your question or it's you have something else that came up, we'll have the chat available for you to send those questions to us at the end. So while we go through this info, just kind of hang tight and hopefully, again, we'll cover it. Some of the slides we're going to kind of skip through. They're just more for definition and information purposes, and can share this out with you at the end as well. And so we want to kind of cover some of the really important parts, including towards the end, what can students do and what can parents do, which is why you are probably here. So we all know that college is different, right? Whether we went a long time ago ourselves, or even if we never went, we can just assume that it's different. And some of the things I was talking to students about the last couple of days who came to some of my Life After Hersey sessions that you probably saw were some of these topics, right? The classes are different. Students have been told the last 13 years of school what time to start, what time to end, when to switch classes, when to eat lunch, when they can go to the bathroom, all those little things, right? And now in college, it's way more flexible. They are in charge of a lot of that. The teaching styles can be different, professors versus teachers, grading and tests can be different. Just the overall environment, of course, can be a lot of times much bigger. Some students are going to schools that are the size of Hersey, but some are going to ones that are 10 to 20 times larger. So that in itself is a major change. The schedule is a big one, where, like I said, there's no bells dictating where to go and where to be, and those personal freedoms, right? And those personal freedoms can be very exciting for students. Finally, I get to go and I get to not be living by the bells, and I can pick my classes and pick where and when I go and what I eat, and when I eat, and when I go to bed, all those kind of things. And it can also be quite overwhelming. So it could be I was thinking about this picture that I didn't think about this when I put it down, but maybe you're excitedly running through campus with this new freedom, or maybe you feel like a tiger is chasing you and you're kind of overwhelmed at, oh my gosh, what do I do? Where do I go? And there's a lot of emotions for students. And because of that, it can lead to a variety of a variety of feelings and behaviors. And so one thing that I really want to stress, and we're going to talk about, today, is that when students are feeling overwhelmed, there are so many different resources that they can access. And so I broke it down. Hopefully this is helpful in like physical places they can go, and then people that they can talk to. So each college is going to have, no matter it's Harper or U of I or any kind of school, they're going to have these different offices, so places that they can go. And so if they are struggling with any different kind of topic, they can go to these places. So there's going to be counseling and student services on these college campuses, trained, licensed therapists who can do group counseling, individual counseling. In the majority of cases, these things will be covered again by the tuition, at least up to a certain amount of visits. If your students have any kind of disabilities, physical or learning disabilities, there's office. It could be called something different. Sometimes it's called Office of Students with Disabilities. And they can go there and get support. The difference, of course, in college is that they have to reach out. So if they have ADHD, if they have a learning disability, if they need extended time, they have to reach out to the office, who will help them reach out to the professor. It's not guaranteed, with an IEP or 504 like it is now, just automatically. They have to go seek it out, and then it will be, accommodated.
Just to add to that, Christopher, I would just
Yeah.
interject really quick here that I think a lot of these, as Christopher mentioned, the names of the buildings, of the facilities are always different. And my experience is it can sometimes take a little while to make contact as well. And so we definitely recommend starting early. I don't think it's unusual at all for parents, students to start to reach out during springtime going into their freshman year, just to make sure that you're identifying where the building's at, what it's called, and what are the resources there.
Definitely. Yeah. If you haven't reached out yet at this point in May, for sure, connect with somebody over there so that when that class starts, before the first classes start, those professors have that information, for sure. Again, if there's any kind of physical health issues, there is usually some sort of health services. They may be limited depending on the school, but they can at least, be a starting point. And then if student is worried about fitting in or connecting or engaging with new people, there's going to be tons of campus recreation opportunities through their residence hall if they're living on campus. Even if they're going to Harper, there's resource weeks, there are activities fairs, and those first few weeks are really the time when a lot of those clubs and organizations are out and about. So hopefully students will be sticking around campus those first few weeks, because that's when a lot of the engagement happens. If they're stressed about finances, go to the financial aid office, of course. If spiritual or religious identity is something that's important to them, many campuses have a department of campus ministry where they can connect to a religion. And then if they're a part of a specific student population, first gen, multicultural, LGBTQ, women, there's a lot of different offices that students can find somebody who they might be able to relate to. And that is definitely places they should go. And then again, you can see the list of people. I encourage them to find somebody who they can connect with and who will connect them. So many of them have been in touch with admissions reps already. Those people can, direct them to other people if they're living on campus. For sure, the resident advisor who's on their floor, who's up here. I mean, that's going to be, somebody that's their job to be there and, help you transition and come to with any questions. So, and bottom line is you're paying for all of these services. While we may lament the cost of college, you're going to want these services, and you'd be upset if they weren't there, I would assume. So please encourage your students to utilize them and maybe research them in advance if you think they might be ones that would be utilized. Because, as we said, all these different changes and all these things can lead to stress, and there's a lot of data behind it. So, Dr. Bondora, do you want to kind of maybe take it over from here? And
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what's interesting, first and foremost, thank you everybody for being here. I think this is a really important topic. It was important before, and then after COVID, wherever we have found ourselves here in the world, it has become even more important. We know there's definitely a mental health crisis that is going on in America. And this is disproportionately affecting students between the ages of 18 and 24. And the irony there is that is college age, right? Statistically, it takes a while for organizations and for the government to really catch up, mental health organizations to catch up with the numbers. And so we're still looking at, very often we're looking at numbers from 2019, 2020, and it probably at best 2021. So we don't even really know the full extent that the pandemic has had on mental health. But, just a rough number is always been, approximately 20%. It's looking really as like that number has increased to upwards of 30% of individuals in the US will struggle with a mental health condition, whether it be anxiety or depression or something else. Those numbers may seem, for some, may seem high, for some, they may seem low. What's interesting, though, about that number, about that 20-30%, is again, disproportionately affecting 18, 24-year-olds at 50%. So 50% of those that are going to struggle, it's going to be in that college age, or if they don't go to college, whatever, it's that really that launching age that I like to refer to. Even more alarming is that of those individuals, the 20-30% that are going to struggle with a mental health condition, only 20% of them are going to actually follow through long-term with treatment, whether that be with therapy, medication, you name it. And so that's a pretty significant number that I think just shows how serious this is and how there is still very much a stigma attached to mental health. Bringing this, directly to college, we see here some numbers. I'm not going to go through every one of them, but it kind of increases. 20% say they feel stressed most of the time. I don't know. I think it's probably closer to 100% in my experience, at least at college. When we get down to more, depression and mental health conditions, we're seeing again that 34%, 13% actually being diagnosed, right? So the difference between feeling versus diagnosis is very different. That means you actually have to seek help. And 10% of college students had thoughts of suicide. Again, we're talking about, the numbers here, that 18 to 24, 18 to 25 range, anywhere between 25 upwards to 50%. And that decreases with age. It's also disproportionately affecting females over males, pretty significantly, almost double. So for those of you that have daughters that are going off to college, that is definitely, we know that through statistics for many, many years that it is disproportionately affecting women more than men. So that's just something to point out as well here. All right, you can go on, Christopher. We're not going to touch on every single. I have anxiety, I have depression, I have substance abuse. Going back, you can go back to anxiety really quick. But just, again, I assume that we all have a kind of a general knowledge here. If not, obviously there's information on this. But again, when we're talking about anxiety, we're not talking about nervousness or test anxiety, not to minimize that by any means, but we're talking about really that significant, pervasive, excessive fear, right? So panic attacks, social anxiety that is inhibiting to the individual. So that's when we're talking about anxiety. For depression, moving on to the next slide, generally we're looking at 2 weeks or longer, but oftentimes it's longer than that. So again, it's pervasive, meaning it's touching across many areas. So we're looking at really a change in affect, feelings of hopelessness, affected sleep, eating, focus issues, not that have been around for years, but new found focus issues, potentially, mood, anger outbursts. Internalizing, externalizing, and possibly even some self-harm behaviors and whatnot. So again, this is more of, both anxiety and depression this is more than what I've noticed with my child before, right? This is increased. And so these are the things that we want to look out for. There's obviously many mental health conditions, but these are the most two common ones, of course, anxiety and depression. And then we also have in here for the next slide, substance abuse and addictions. What I want everybody to hear for substance abuse and addictions is, college campuses, especially depending on where they go, it can be party central, right? Depending on if they go to a small private college versus if they're going to, Southern Illinois University versus, Illinois State versus Iowa. I mean, every college is going to have its own, situations and their own structure and their own social life. To join a fraternity or sorority, to not join a fraternity or sorority. What I think is important is that, your kids, regardless, they're going to be exposed to alcohol and drugs. And so the key here is that they're making good decisions as it relates to it. What I wanted to point out here is what came first, is the chicken or the egg. Okay, so this is kind of a really good, metaphor that we use as it applies to substance abuse, because oftentimes what we see is the anxiety and the depression is present already, or it starts to build. And so teens, young adults are self-medicating. Other times it can be the opposite. They could be great. You send them off to college and they start engaging in substance abuse pretty regularly, and that causes them to fall into a depression. So it's possible we need to be able to identify which came first. But the fishbowl effect is the other thing that I wanted to point out to everybody, is that the fishbowl effect is that, well, everybody's doing it. Not the case, right? It's not the case at Hershey. It's not the case at college. But if we surround ourselves with people that are using it every single day, or every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then also Sunday, because it's college night, then it becomes their fishbowl, right? So being mindful of that when your kids, combat your concerns with, oh, everybody's doing it. No, not everybody's doing it, right? And there's also such a thing as moderation. Obviously, we are, encouraging use at or no use at all, but if they are when at a legal age, but we also know they're going to be exposed to it. So it's about really being able to be careful and deliberate and making sure that they are safe with it. Some of the warning signs and red flags, obviously, is early age of onset. So if they've had problems already pre-18, that is a concern. They have any mental health concerns, if they have ADHD, those are all areas that make them predisposed to addictions issues. Going on to the next slide, effective treatments. Again, I'm going to just gloss over this here, but the point being is there's no silver bullet, but there is a wide variety of treatments. It is not just therapy. It is not just medication. It is a combination of a lot of things. And obviously medication is something that is usually held off for a while until we try other options. But medications sometimes are needed in order for students to be able to have the energy to get up in the morning and to exercise and eat healthier. So that can be a viable option as well. But it really depends at 18. The big difference is that it's the kids are in charge, right? They're now the adults. They are driving. They're in the front seat. And so it's very important that they are the ones that are steering their treatment, with support from all of you as well. You'll notice family support and engagement is one of the significant factors as to whether or not a child or adult follows through a treatment, which I find to be really startling. But it makes sense, right? Because they are, we are, as a parent myself, we are our kids' number one influence. And so if we are pro mental health and pro therapy, they're going to be more likely to seek out therapy versus if it's very taboo and very hush hush. With us, they're similarly probably going to take on the same. They're going to mirror the same effects. So normal versus, abnormal, atypical, right? What does that look like? That was a consistent question that came up with all of you. College is stressful. It is. That picture that Christopher showed in the beginning with like everybody running and the tiger was running, and I think that's like this fantasy that students have in their heads, and like they're going to go to college and it's going to be this amazing, wonderful time. And in a lot of ways it is, right? But I don't ever remember running down a field with a tiger behind me. It's not realistic. And so we get down there and then it's like, they get, nowadays it's not, 18 books, they're all online and virtual, but they get, their syllabi and they go to their classes and they're like, oh my gosh. And then the stark reality of it all sets in. So there's a lot: academic challenges, fitting in with peers, identity, dating, just the competing demands. There may be some initial separation anxiety, right? But again, the key word here is initial and not pervasive, meaning it's going to be, one area, just like any of us that we probably have experienced, there's a tough time here and there, but we're able to rebound, versus it being across many areas and we're not seeing that rebound. That's the concern. And that goes it's a good segue into the next slide. How do we know that something is not right? Okay. So I've been in the school social work position for 19 years. I've also been in the private sector and private practice for 17 years. So working with adolescents as well as working with college age students and young adults, the launching phase or the failure to launching phase that happens, during college or after college. I've seen a lot of this. I've seen kind of the good, bad, and the ugly. And I think what we all, probably the worst horror story that we could possibly think of, or one of the worst rather, at least, is which is a real life situation that I have seen many, many times, is, we find out the end of the semester in December that our child actually has not been going to college. They've been sitting in their dorm room, rotting away, playing video games, possibly using, self-medicating, not going to class at all, not taking care of themselves, eating ramen every day, not leaving their rooms, disengaging with everybody, not returning phone calls to you, to friends. That may sound like, oh gosh, well, how does that happen? I'm flabbergasted by it as well, but you would be surprised how often this happens. And the reason why is because they're away, they're removed. It's mom, Dad, let me have my freedom. This is college. I need to do this. And there's definitely truth to that, right? But at the same time, though, there can't be this first check-in December either or in May, because oftentimes then we're, well, yep, actually, Jimmy, Susie went to class one time the whole semester or for the first week and then stopped going. And it's, wow, okay, so now we have a big issue in our hands. And obviously pulling a student out of a depression, like that can be really, really, really tough. So that is a kind of like our worst scenario there. And I hate to paint that picture, but what does that look like? Kind of, ramping up to that, really having those, pervasive, chronic symptoms over time. It'll start somewhere, but it will continue. Increasing anxiety, withdrawal and isolation, not answering your phone calls, not coming home as much. Again, some level of anxiety, separation anxiety from home is normal. So if they're not bringing their laundry home as much as they used to, that could be something like, are you doing your laundry or something else going on, right? Increase in substance abuse, decrease in hygiene is another one. Them reporting that they're having trouble with concentrating lately, and then troubles with the law, of course, DUIs, anything like that, definitely is a red flag for you as well. Go on to the next one there. Okay. So the two main slides that we really wanted to focus on here is what can students do, and then what can you do? And we're going to really gloss over the students portion. Although I think this is a presentation that could probably be 4 hours long, quite frankly. But I really want to focus on what you guys can do, because you're the ones that are here. But what can students do just, really quickly here? It is important, okay, that they are taking control of their own education. There is, there's a metaphor that speaks on, again, whoever's in the driving seat is going to be the one that's driving. So if your child has been in the back seat, all along, and all of a sudden, they're up in the front seat, they're going to have to either, especially if they're behind the wheel, they're going to have to either steer the wheel and they're going to have to start to drive, or they're going to crash, right? But if you've always been the one driving, they may not know how to drive. And so we need to be able to work that into the process. And so we're going to get into that in a moment here in terms of what you can do, but they need to be able to take control. They need to know how to take control. So self-advocacy, being assertive, speaking up for themselves, taking advantage of the resources. Christopher was talking about all the resources at college. Colleges have just an infinite number of resources. And so making sure they know how to take advantage of those, and that they're able to make calls. Are they able to make a call? I honestly have some 18-year-olds that aren't able to make a phone call to make an appointment for themselves, to their dentist or their doctor. That is alarming, right? Those are things they should be able to do. Being organized, setting goals, and self-care. This is something else that is startling, that oftentimes I find out that parents are still heavily prompting their kids for their medication, their vitamins, their take a shower, things like that. If those are things that we're dealing with as a senior, that's a concern, right? Because what is it going to look like when they're on their own and they don't have mom and dad prompting them for those things? So moving over to what parents can do. This is, again, really, I think the key for what a lot of you came here for. And I've touched on some of this already, but there is no silver bullet. There is no black and white here. Raising a college generation today, college students today, is extremely, extremely complicated. It depends on your child. It depends on their unique needs. But it really requires you walking a tightrope of offering them, a support net really underneath, what they have going on. But really, it's just that support net, and it's allowing them to, to succeed and to struggle while you're there to assist them if they have struggles. So there's no, perfect recipe here. And so please understand that. But make sure that you're talking to your college student, your senior now. These are the conversations you should be having right now if you haven't already have them, and make it a regular occurrence. Oh, mom, oh, dad, no. We need to talk about this, right? This is important. So nothing wrong with this conversation. If they're pushing up that conversation, it's because it's maybe uncomfortable for them. They don't want to hear it, but too bad. We got to have these conversations. I cannot stress this enough, if your young adult has been in therapy before or currently is in therapy, get them a therapist ASAP, down at the college that they are at. Do not wait. With the mental health crisis, we're at like a 3 to 6 month wait I should say, 3 weeks in the best case with private insurance, all the way up to 6 months for public insurance. And even with some really good insurances, it can take up to 2 months to find therapy. Some of the college towns, it's going to take much longer. So it would not be unrealistic at all to start seeking out therapy resources down at the college in the next month or two, really, for them to have that access. Otherwise, if you wait till they get down there, and especially if you're relying on them to do it alone, that could be a problem. This is one of those areas that I'd really stress that I know I just got done talking about how they need to make their appointments and do things like that. This is one of those areas that needs to be built in already. It already needs to be there for them. They should definitely be part of that process by all means, but make sure that is either they have done it and you can confirm it, or you guys have done it together and that it's in place already. And that's not just like student services down at the college, but that's actually having a therapist down there. That again is if they have struggled with a mental health condition and are currently in therapy where they're not going to be able to continue with their therapist. Begin the process now. So we talked about that. Laundry, hygiene, medication compliance, start removing those safety nets now if you haven't already. Allow them to have a little bit of sink or swim, experiences with this. Allow them to struggle while they're still in your house so that you can see like, oh my gosh, you have not showered in 2 days, or, oh my gosh, you've forgotten to take your medication for the past 3 days. These are issues. These are situations like what's going to happen if this happens at college, right? So this way that you're able to see what is happening, you're able to monitor those things, which is really important. Creating a timeline. So this is something else. This is probably the most common question that I get from parents, both, in the school sector as well as in the private sector, in terms of how much is too much? I don't want to micromanage, and I will caution you on that. And that again, is walking that tightrope. You don't want to micromanage, right? This is not, if you are doing everything for your college student, at what point does that end, right? Are you going to also call and inquire about their internships and then also get them their first job? No, right? At some point it ends, and they're going to that failure to launch. They're not going to be able to get themselves off. So you cannot micromanage. They definitely have to be in the driver's seat. However, we also can't wait till December to say, oh, so how did you do in college, right? Because then oftentimes, in my experiences, that doesn't always go well. And so having a timeline, having a checklist, a structure, a schedule of when are you, let's set up some dates for you to come home. Let's set up some dates for us to come visit so that we can see how bad your dorm room looks, and take out everything that's molded in your fridge. Let's set up the time here is totally up to the family and it's up to the situation. I roughly recommend like a once a month grade check-in. And I don't mean check-in like, where your child tells you they're getting straight A's and then you just stop asking them. I'm saying where they're actually physically showing you their grades. Good thing is everything is accessible online. Bad news is you're not going to have access to that. So you need to have them show you access to that. There's nothing wrong, especially if you are paying any aspect of their education. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, letting them know it's not that they don't trust you. It's just that we want to have good communication with you throughout. And over time, this doesn't have to happen for all 4 years, but at least for that first year, that is absolutely appropriate. And again, especially based on how you've seen them perform in high school. But keep in mind, they could be straight A students. They could be as perfect as possible. They go off to school. The success rate of college students is also startling. A lot of students find a period of time where they have this freedom and they've never had this much freedom, and there's parties and there's social life and sometimes they can't control and they can't really manage all that. So even for your students that you're maybe thinking, oh, they're good, they got it, I would encourage you to really kind of create that plan and that structure to have those check-ins. We already talked really about the driver's seat, metaphor, and the micromanaging and really checking in on them every single day is all that's going to lead to is temporary compliance. It's really about building that trust with them, but also making sure that you are able to have regular check-ins. I was also asked, how frequently should I check in every day? Do they need to call me every day? No, absolutely not. It's not necessary, but some parents do that, not helpful. And the flip side of that, what's the timeline? Is it a couple times a week? Is it minimally once a week? Something like that would probably be fair. And it also depends on where your child's at, right? Are you worried about them? Is there some concerns about medical conditions, whatnot? or are things going pretty well? You can also loosen up as the year goes on, and those check-ins can possibly decrease. So those are some of this main, we have a really short period of time here, but I want to just get to our resources last, and then we'll open it up to questions. So there's an amazing website that was just created by a social worker in the field. Oh, can you go back really quick to that, Christopher?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to try to copy it really quick and put it in the chat for everybody. So
got it. Okay.
1 second.
There was an amazing website that was created, and it is a website that was created specifically for college students and for their parents. And so collegementalhealth.help.com. If you do nothing else, with this, and I'm assuming that you all will, but actually have your kids put it in their phone and text to themselves. We don't have a QR code here, which we probably could have, but have them, pull it up in your phone, text it to them, tell them to save it. This has everything from a therapist directory, search engine for every state, for the whole US. It has scripts on what to say in a phone call when you're calling a therapist. It has crisis numbers. It has scenarios. It has parent information. It has student information. This is nothing like this has ever been created, shockingly. This was at, I believe, Rutledge College. And it was something that was created by a doctoral student, really as a resource for parents and for students specifically in college. Then, some other websites here: National Institute of Mental Health, American Psychiatric Association, SAMHSA. These are all really credible resources, everybody, that you should have access to. There's also a lot of resources that aren't so credible, so just be mindful of what you see online. But if nothing else, that collegementalhealth.com answers so many questions that you may still have. I'm going to end there because I know this is one additional slide that we had at the end with additional resources for everybody, but I know we are out of time formally here, but we are going to stay on to answer any questions that anybody has. But again, before we end our recording here, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. This is a really important topic. Communication is key. And if you have any questions about anything that we talked about beyond today's presentation, reach out to your child's counselor, Christopher, to their social worker, psychologist, to their therapist, just to make sure that you have all the information and that you are ready to launch your young adults successfully.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeff. And as a reminder too, if you've seen in my Sunday emails, I'm doing a series of short transition presentations for the students as well. So this week we did one on the academic differences, and then yesterday was organization and time management. The few students came in person, but they are also on the Life After Hersey YouTube. They're each less than 15 minutes long. We are going to have one mental health for students, as well as campus safety and some other things. So hopefully, if they can't find those things live or can't attend live, they will watch those, and you can watch them together on YouTube to break them down into smaller little chunks or specific topics as well as all those resources. Again, we can share these slides out. Your college, the colleges the student's going to go to, is going to have all kinds of resources on their websites as well. So hopefully students go to that too. So that is the end again of our formal presentation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, if you want to throw them in the chat, feel free to do so, or reach out to us outside of Zoom, and we can help you there. So we'll stick around for a few minutes, and if we don't see anyone else posting anything, or if you all log off, we will end this. But thank you so much, and have a great day, everybody.